Okay, for the next step, we are gonna show you how you can do the bit process for your project, so that you can run continuous integration and deployment stuff. Okay, let's go ahead. Now, for the bit configuration, you're gonna click the bit link, and then it will take you to here. And then in this page, if you have already set up the big process, then you will see the big queue. Right now we don't have anything because we haven't set it up yet. So so next step is we're gonna set up the big configuration. So in SyncRelease, you can do the three type of workflow for your bit process. So the first one is every time a new release package is created, you want to run some kind of automation, test or bit process, then you can use this option. And then the second option is every time you're a developer or someone in your team make a commit code changes to your repository, let's say to master branch, and then every time a new commit push to the master branch, you want to run the bit process, then you can use this second option. And then third option or the third workflow is for when your team members submit the pull request in GitHub, and then you want to run some kind of bit process and code sanity check, like the link check or unit test run and on their new pull request, then you can use this last option. So in today's tutorial, I'm going to show you how you can create the bit process for your new release package creation. So we're going to use the first option for the demo purpose. Now, before we get started with setting up the big configuration for our new release package creation workflow, let's first take a look at our code. So if you look at the code, right, we have only one single endpoint. All it does is adding the two integer number using our own custom add function. So it all does is just adding two number. So why don't we write the unit test cases for that function to make sure it is working as expected, and then we will include these unit tests for our bit process. So here I have the test cases written already. So basically, first we import the function, our custom function add, and then we have the two test cases. The first one is just adding the two number 2 and 3, and then we expect the result to be number 5. So the first test case should pass. And then the second test case is like we're trying to intentionally fail because we are just dividing by 0, so it should throw the JavaScript error. So the first case should be passing, and then second test case will fail. So that's the expected behavior. And then the way we run the unit test is we're gonna be using the Mocha for the unit test run, and then for the output of the unit test we will store as a Mocha awesome report. And then we're gonna also do the code coverage report using the Istanbul library NYC, and then the output will be in the Clover HTML format. So let's run the test case. So npm run test. Okay, so now as you see, the first test case is passing, and then the second test case failed. So this is what we had expected. So everything is good. So now let's commit these changes. So I'm adding this test case, and then I'm updating the git ignore to ignore the code coverage output at the runtime. So let me commit this change, adding new unit test cases for add function. Okay, we now commit it and git push origin add. Okay, now it is committed to and then push to the master on the remote branch. Excuse me. Next, now we're gonna configure the bit process. So all the bit in SyncRelease are run inside the Docker container, so Docker image basically. So here on this page, if you click it, you can manage the list of the Docker images. So I already have the Node.js Docker image, so I'm gonna be using that one. So let me select the Node.js, and then I will add the automated test worker. So here, to briefly explain, in SyncRelease, you don't have to know the complex YAML or shell script configuration. Everything is done through the available worker, plugin. So here is the list of all, the plugin worker plugin. So basically, they are reusable. So anytime you want to use it, just click add, and then it will be added to your big configuration. So big configuration is basically a sequence of tasks that will be executed in the order that you define. So in this case, we will run the unit test. Then, okay, before we run the unit test, sometimes you might want to install all the yarn, etc. So why don't we install yarn? So I just give a step name as yarn install. You can give any task description and anything you want. So this is the actual command we will run to install and install. Okay, after installing the node module dependency, we want to run the unit test. So our unit test command is npm run test, because this is what is defined in our package.json file. So here, so we run that, and then if we have any expectation, basically minimum requirement, how many percentage of the test cases should be passing for to consider a bit is successful or not. So let's say we consider at least 50% of the test case need to be passed. So I enter 50. But if you want all the test cases need to be passed, you can enter 100. Otherwise, let's say you don't care even if everything is failing, then you enter 0. So in our case, just for demo, let's put 50. So assuming all the 50, half of the test cases should be passing, so that for a bit to be successful. And then next is like we need to tell SyncRelease where to find the unit test result output. So in our case, we are basically using the Mocha Awesome reporter for our unit test output. So we know that after the test is run, Mocha Awesome will generate a report here. So it's a related path to your project, Mocha Awesome dash report. Underneath, we have this file. So we want to tell the SyncRelease to look up for that file. Because of that, so I've used the related path, and then it's called mochaawesome.json. And then currently SyncRelease support two type of unit test output file. So the first one is JUnit. So if your testing framework can generate or output the JUnit, it will work like a magic here in SyncRelease. So in our case right now in this demo, I'm using the Mocha option, so I will choose this option. And also I also would like to see the code coverage information, so I check that. And then we know that our code coverage is generated under the coverage folder, and then the format is global XML format. So we're gonna give that path, related path, coverage, and then clover.html. And then here again, similar to the minimum requirement for the percentage of the passing test cases. Similarly, here you can also define how many percentage of your code should be covered to consider, for considering a build to be successful or not. So in our case, let's say 70% require code coverage, and then let's save this configuration. Okay, nothing is now, no bit has run yet because we just configured the configuration. So because let me go back just to show you, because we have configured the bit configuration for the first option. So the first option is anytime a new release package is created, we want to run this bit process. So this is what we have configured. So now let's come back to the home page of this project. So right now you can see we have the two release package, but they don't have any unit test cases. So no test cases. If you run it, it will fail. Because so let me try this. So let's run the previous release package. That doesn't have any test packages yet. Any test cases yet. It doesn't have that. So the very first thing is trying to do the yen install. Okay, test case fails because we require 50% to be run, but we don't have any test cases in the last release package because we haven't added any test cases. So that's why it's failing. So it's expected, so not a problem. So let's come back here and then let's create a new release package. So here we had the outstanding changes where we had added the new test cases. This one. This is the new test case that we just added. So let's select this outstanding chain, and then let's create a new release package. So once we create once we create the new release package, it should automatically trigger the new build on top of this new release package. So let's create it. So I don't change any message about this. Let me just put the quotation. Okay, now as you can see, the release package number 3 is created, and then it automatically triggers the bit process. So let's see the action in real time. So we stay doing the first step of installing the node packages, yen install. So let's wait. Okay, now you see all the the bit is successful, and then the SyncRelease will show you how much percentage of the time is spent on all your tasks. So as we can see here, yen install take majority of our time, 81% of the time, and then the unit test itself, it only take 18%, 18.5%. So anyhow, and then if you want to see the output for the particular step or the task, you can also see here. So we can see all the output from this yen install step. And then let's move on to the our unit test report. You can see our command to run the test is this, and then we say at least half of the test cases should be passing, and then this is actually the actual output, result. So 50% of them pass, so it matched the requirement. So the bit is successful. So let's look at the detail of the bit output in the unit test report. So you can see exactly very beautiful unit test report. So when something is failed, you can see the actual code where it failed, So that way you or your team can easily narrow down, once something go wrong or your bit fail, you can easily find out where the test case is failing instead of having to download or rerun locally. So it's pretty useful feature. So the next is we can also see the code coverage information. So in this case, we have basically covered all the code changes. I mean, our code file, because we only have one function called add, and then all the um, line in the add.js file are covered. So you can drill down, um, all the changes are covered. So in this case, you can see add.js file, line coverage is 100%, all the function and method are also covered 100%. But if you have a class, like for example, if it's like a PHP or Java or C#, it will show you the which class has what percentage of code coverage and which function, or how much percentage of the function or the method are covered. But because we are just using the Node.js without any class, so we don't have any information here. But at least it shows you, for this add.js file, everything is 100% covered. So it's pretty cool feature. So that means you can also see the code coverage information. You can also see the test cases information right inside the SyncRelease without having to download or rerun your test cases locally. So basically, this is how you can set up the bit process. So sometimes if you want to rerun the particular bit, you can also just click this, rebuild, and then SyncRelease will do the rebuild for this particular queue. And also, you can search for all the history of your big queue, find the date time, sorting, etc. And then if you want to also set up for the on commit, anytime a new code change is pushed to your repository, you want to run some kind of bit process, then you use this second option. I mean, it's pretty similar, same thing. You just choose the Docker image, and then you define which target branch you want to listen for this kind of commit changes. So the rest is pretty much the same. And also the same for the pull request. Anytime the pull request is created, it will run the big configuration that you define here. So that's it. So in this case, you can also, every time after a bit is completed, you can always look at the bit report very nicely. You don't have to look or search in the crazy line of big output log. It will show you in the very nice graphic, and then detailed information. Anyhow, so this is how you can do the bit process. And then next, I will talk about how you can, let's say, bit the Docker image in your bit process. Okay, I'll show you how you can bit the Docker image as part of your bit process. So now let's go back to the same bit configuration we have for new release package creation. So I will click on this first option, and then right now what we have is it's just doing the yarn install and then running the unit test. Okay, now let's add the Docker image, building the Docker image worker plugin. So here we can say we can tell what is the Docker, the context directory for building the Docker image. I will say just is the root of your project, this project repository, and then the next is like we need to tell the full name for your Docker image. So I'm gonna be publishing under my Docker Hub account. So I just call this calculator API, and then I will call this as a latest tag, and then I need to give the username. Okay, I already had the password, so just copy and paste. So and the next is by default we're gonna be all the way bit the Docker image and push to Docker Hub. But if you have the other, Docker registry like, Google or, Amazon, then you can also enter here the URL to those Docker registry. So in my case, I'm just using the Docker Hub. So I just click that and select that. And then the last step is, the last input for this configuration is you sometimes you want to run the Docker bit by targeting to specific target. So in our case, we don't have any bit target, so I just leave it empty. It's optional. So before we start building, one thing we have to do is, like, right now we don't have any Docker file in our project. Before. So I just added the new Docker file. So all it does is, like, we're gonna be building the Docker image from Node Alpine 3.11 Docker image, and then I just making sure we have all the Yen library installed, and then we copy the whatever the current code we have into the app directory, and then we define app as the working directory for. We define the app /app as the working directory, and then next is, like, we do the yen install production mode, and then we remove all the development file, like for example code coverage, Walker awesome report, and then also the source file, we don't need it anymore, and also the test file, test cases file, we don't need it anymore, so we just deleting it so that our Docker image is more compact and smaller size. And then the next is the last step in our Docker files, telling the command to run this Docker image. Is basically just npm run start, because that's what we have defined in our package.json file. This is for the production deployment. So with that, now we have this Docker image ready, and then we're gonna commit this Docker image, adding not the Docker image, sorry, we're gonna add this Docker file so that we can bit the Docker image with our bit process. So adding the Docker file, okay, and then I will, okay, let me stop this. I will push this to GitHub. Okay, so we added the Docker file, so it should be ready to start building soon. So now let's save this big configuration. So you can see all we are doing is adding the extra step or extra task, new task called bit Docker image. So all we do is we are trying to bit the Docker image using this image name, and then I will be logging to the our login credential so that we can publish to the Docker Hub. That's it. So let me save. Okay, now before we trigger the new build, let's get the latest code changes. Okay, here we see the latest code changes outstanding is the new changes for adding the Docker file. So let's click that, and then we're gonna create a new release package. So currently we have 3 release packages. So after selecting this commit and then creating the new release package, it will be the release package number 4. So now we can give any message about this new release. So I will just leave this as default. So click OK. Okay, now we have the new release package is created, because we have configured for bit process for new release package creation. So it's automatically, you can see the bit already started. So let's wait and see. Right now it is doing the yen install is complete, and then it's gonna run the unit test. After that, it's gonna be building the Docker image. So here we can see the live output from our Docker build process, Docker image building process. In a few minutes or seconds, this should be completed. Just for a few more minutes. Okay, now we are done. So we can see our build report. Building the Docker image, it takes 71% of the time, so 1.15 minutes, and then the yarn install takes the second most of the time, and then the shortest time taken is running the unit test. It's only take 5 seconds. So anyway, let's see so everything is successful, is published. So let me go to this Docker image. Okay, should be available there. Okay, so you see, it's just pushed 1 minute ago. So it's automatically pushed from SyncRelease after the Docker image is built as part of the build process. So there you go. This is how you can run the build process to publish Docker image using SyncRelease. Very easy. You don't have to do any kind of complex share script or big configuration. So next step, I'm gonna show you how you can deploying to your production or test environment as part of the build process, and then pull the Docker image that we just created, and then run that new Docker image on your test or production website. Okay, now next, let's say every time a new release package is created, we will run the build process like we already configure, and then we will also deploying our new release package to, let's say, test environment using the Docker image we have built in the previous step. So right now, in our release configuration, big configuration for release package creation is we have 3 steps. First, we install the node module dependency, and then after that, we run the unit test, and then we do the building of Docker image. So let's say after the Docker image is built, let's say we deploy that Docker new image to the test environment. Basically, all we're going to be doing is we pull the latest Docker image, and then we will restart our Docker application on the remote server. So that is the game plan. So let's go back to our code. This is the Docker Compose file we previously used for deploying to production. And then as you can see here, we are basically mounting our application code into the Docker image. But because we already built our own Docker image, which contain all the code required for running our application, so we don't need to mount that anymore. So let's say we create a new Docker Compose file just for the test environment. So by the way, for your real world project, you don't need to you may not necessarily need to create all these different type of Docker Compose file for different environment. I'm just doing it just for simplicity purpose, just for demonstration. But in your real world project, you might want to consider using env file specifically created for different environment with a different environment variable. So anyway, so let's see, just first copy this from the production Docker Compose file. Instead of using the Node.js, Docker image, let's use our application Docker image, which is right here. Use the latest tag, and then this is just a container name, and then let's say, now I will update the test environment URL to run, and then we don't need to mount the Docker image. We don't need to mount our source code or the application code into the Docker image anymore, because our Docker image already contains all the code required to run our application, to run our application. So I think that's it. Okay. And then let's commit this. Adding Docker Compose file for test environment. Okay, next let me push this chain to the GitHub. Now we go back to our big configuration for new release packet creation. So right now, if you look at, we are just doing the first installing the Node module packages, and then run the unit test, and then build the Docker image for our application. So the next step is like we're gonna deploy to the test environment, using this newly built Docker image. So we already also committed our Docker Compose file for the test configuration, test environment. So we are now ready to make the change to our bit configuration. So the very first thing before we do the deployment is we're gonna clean all the file and in our current bit directory. Basically we're gonna basically clean up, remove all the file in our project repository, for this bit before we deploy, because we no longer need to upload any of the code. All we need is just the Docker Compose.test.yaml file, the one we just committed in the previous step, which is for the test environment. So I call this as a cleanup step, and then I will remove all the file except the Docker Compose.test.yaml. This is for the test environment. So we keep this file, Docker Compose.test.yaml file, but we delete everything else before we upload or deploy to the remote server. So this is for the cleanup, and then we're gonna use the SSH to deploy. So I just call this test as deploy to test, and then our remote, the test server address is calculator calculator test.random21.com, and then the username is SyncRelease, and then we have the private key. Okay, I have this private key, and then we're gonna be deploying to home.synrelease web app, and then the calculator API test directory. This is the absolute path where we want to upload or deploy on the remote server. And then here, this is just basically what is the source directory to be uploaded. So in this case, it will be the root of our project repository, and then after the cleanup step, it will only contain it should only contain the Docker Compose.test.yaml file for the test environment. and then we don't exclude anything. We don't need to run. The only thing we will run is after the Docker Compose desktop file is uploaded to the remote server, we need to basically pull the latest Docker image and then restart our Docker application. So before doing that, let me use this option basically because we're gonna be using the Docker Compose test.yaml file to run our application. Typically, Docker Compose expects Docker Compose.yaml file, so we just need to tell where to look for. So I will export this variable compose file equal to Docker Compose.test.yaml, and then we're gonna go to our deployment folder, and then we're gonna do the Docker Compose pull, and then Docker Compose stop, and then Docker Compose, Docker Compose app, and run in the background mode. So basically, this is the environment variable flag only for this session. So, when we deploy, we are basically telling the Docker whenever it look up for the Docker Compose file, please use this file instead of default file Docker Compose.yaml. So with this environment variable, it will look for this Docker Compose.test.yaml file. Okay, and then next, let me check if there's anything missing. CALCULATOR calculator. Let me first make sure we have this. Okay, good. Then let me save this. And then now we go to our release changes. So we see this Docker Compose test.yaml file we just committed in the previous step. So now we are ready to include it in the next release package. So right now we only have release package up to number 4. We're gonna create the release package number 5. So once we create that new release package number 5, it should automatically trigger the big process, and then in that big process it will do the unit test, and then it will also build the Docker image and then deploy to test environment. So let's create a new release package and let's see what happened. Okay, now new release package is created, and then it already started the bit process for this new release package. Right now it is doing the yarn installation, installing the node module packages. Okay, that is done, and then now it's move on to running the unit test. So unit test is also done, and then is right now building the Docker image in the step 3. I think it's almost done with building the Docker image. Okay, now it is in the deployment process. Okay, it is done. So let's go and check it out. Our test environment. Okay, it is up and running. Then our endpoint for adding the to number, this is also working. Okay, so just to demonstrate, how we can further make the release packet creation and automated bit deployment. So let me make another chain. So before we continue, so this is basically how you can do the bit process. In this case we run the unit test and then build the Docker image, and then we deploy that new Docker image to our test environment. So you can do this kind of continuous integration and deployment process for your project as well. So and then just to demonstrate further, let's make just a dummy chain. So right now our home page has only title saying calculator API, and then let's make a chain. It is also running now in test environment. I'm just making it up, just a stupid chain, just for the demonstration purpose. So we will commit this chain. Before we commit, let me transpile this code. Okay, and then run it. So I transpiled this code into ES5 using Babel. So let me commit this chain, making home page title, home page message update test environment. Then let me commit this code to GitHub. Then we go back to SyncRelease, refresh. Okay, now let's create a new release package using this latest chain. So it will be release package number 6. So I use the same default message from my commit message, but you can change anything you want for your new release package creation. Okay. So now the new release package is created, and then it's already triggered the bit process. So let's wait. So right now you see it is doing the yarn installation of the node module packages. So in the future, in the coming few months, we have the roadmap to add optimization feature so that we can catch these yarn and node npm install to speed up your bit process. Okay, unit is passed. Now it's trying to build the Docker image. Then it's almost done. So Okay, and now is in the deployment process. So during the deployment process is also doing the Docker, Docker Compose pool, pulling the latest Docker image that we just built. Okay, it's done. So everything is completed. Let's go and check it out. Refresh. Okay, you see our latest code changes is now in the test environment. So this is basically what we have done is every time a new release packet is created, we run the unit test, and then this is basically doing kind of like continuous integration, and then we do the deployment right away automatically to the test environment. So that's it. So we can also see the unit test result in detail. Also, we can check out the code coverage easily. Okay. So pretty much that is the demonstration how you can do the deployment, bit process, continuous integration, continuous deployment, etc. And then in the future tutorial, I will show you more more about the how you can do the deployment option as well, and also how you can do the release node, or how you can take advantage of release node to do the better release coordination and in your team. So that's it for today tutorial. So thank you so much for watching. I appreciate for your time for watching this tutorial, and also please don't forget to check out SyncRelease.com. If you haven't signed up yet, you can get the free access by joining our beta testing program. You don't have to pay anything at all. It's completely free. All we want is just your feedback to make SyncRelease better, release management tool for our development and DevOps community. So thank you so much for watching. Thank you. Bye bye.